Mao Zedong and the Cultural Revolution. China's location. China is located in the northeast hemisphere. It is a part of the Asian continent. In relation to other countries, it is south of Russia and Mongolia, and is north of India and Vietnam. What happened? Mao Zedong's goal was to preserve communism in China. In order to do this, he wanted to get rid of old culture, habits, and ideas, so he could remove capitalism from the Chinese Communist Party. Mao Zedong closed schools and promoted nationalism to students, which ultimately led to the Red Guard. What led to the revolution? The Great Leap Forward was meant to revolutionize China's agriculture and economy. The government controlled the farms, which led to farmers having very little incentive to work. Soon, bad weather damaged crops, which led to the Great Famine. There were about 20 million deaths reported during this time, with 3 million being by suicide.
Who was involved? Mao Zedong started and led the revolution and died on September 9, 1976. The Gang of Four: Jiang Qing, Mao's wife, Jiang Chongqueo, deputy head under Jiang, and was responsible for the first propaganda image of the revolution. Yeo Wenyan, literary polemicist who created essays for Mao and Jiang to use against communist leaders. Wang Hongwen, former deputy chairman. Kang Xing and Zai Fuqi were two additional members, but they died before 1976. Lin Biao, Minister of Defense and Mao's successor. Red Guards, youth paramilitary who wore red armbands and carried around Mao's book. Many of the culprits have not apologized except for the Red Guards, who apologized to their former teachers. Mao and none of the Gang of Four apologized before their deaths. In fact, Jiang Qing denied any involvement with the death of her victims.
On this slide, we have the opposition. So going clockwise, we have Mao Zedong, Jian Qing, Zheng Qianchao, Yao Wenyuan, Wang Hongwei, the Red Guards, Shi Fuji, Kang Xing, and Lin Biao.
Who were the victims? President Liu Shaikui imprisoned and branded a traitor in the summer of 1967. Premier Zhao Enlai, chief negotiator before and during the revolution. Deng Xiaoping, former premier and chairman, died on February 19, 1997. Hua Guofeng, former premier, arrested the Gang of Four and died on August 20, 2008. Urban citizens forced to relocation to rural areas, causing industrial production to drop. Many victims suffered imprisonment, torture, humiliation, suicide, and seizure of property at the hands of the Red Guards.
Next, we have the defense going clockwise once again. President Liu Shaoqi, Primer Zhou Enlai, Primer Deng Xiaoping, and Hua Guofeng. This timeline ranges from May 1966 to June 1981. The most important dates during this time are as follows. 1966, May 16th, the start of the revolution. 25 May 1966, the Red Guards vowed to die protecting Mao. From August to November of 1966, we have 11 million Red Guards coming from across the country. Religion and openness of faith is banned. Churches and temples are destroyed and believers are imprisoned. July of 1967, insurrections in cities occur. The summer of 1967, Liu Shaoqi is overthrown and imprisoned. He is also branded as a traitor. On the 12th of November, 1967, Liu Shaoqi dies in prison. On the 13th of September, 1971, Lin Biao, Mao's successor, dies in a plane crash trying to escape the USSR after attempting and a power grab by installing martial law. On April 1973, Deng Xiaoping becomes premier. On January 8, 1976, Zhao Enlai dies. On the 9th of September 1976, Mao Zedong dies, which signifies the end of the revolution. On the 6th of October 1976, Hua Guofeng arrests the Gang of Four, officially ending the Cultural Revolution.
The outcome of Mao's death took place on September 9th, 1976. That's when the city developed into a lawlessness organization with the Red Guard groups fighting each other after Mao couldn't keep the peace. The People's Liberation Army disarmed them and sent them into communities in the countryside. On the 6th of October in 1976, Premier Hua Guofeng arrested the Gang of Four a month after they tried to take over. All were given heavy sentences and then to a lighter, and then later released from the penitentiary. Former members were reinstated to their original occupations after being incarcerated. Deng Xiaoping became the leader for the next 2 decades, and approximately 1.5 million people were slaughtered, but the span is 500,000 to 2 million.
A short-term effect was the closing of schools, which affected educational systems in China. A long-term effect was that citizens of China lost faith in government because it was the CCP versus the CCP. Another long-term effect was the closing of factories, which caused an additional 12% economic drop. And a long-term effect is violent peace protests, and we can see this through the June 4th massacre of 1989. Foreign relations. 40 countries established relations with China at the time, but 30 of those countries went into diplomatic disputes. Nixon came to visit the country after being invited by Premier Zhao Enlai. He was there to discuss several different countries and the start process of business renewal between China and the U.S. China and the Soviet Union did not have a good relationship because of their differing views of communism. However, by the 1980s, these relations have been renewed as China's ties with other nations have improved.